previous session, we have implemented our API gateway and circuit breaker. In this session, we shall implement config server. The config server is used to read some properties from the GitHub and target microservice, say in our case retail bank manager service, will access those properties through config server. So in this session we shall implement the config server, and in the next session we shall enhance the retail bank manager service so that it can access a property using config server. So for that, we create one repository in the GitHub where we store the property, and then we shall implement the config server. So let's start coding. Now we create a repository in GitHub to store the properties. Say we give the name retail bank properties and a brief descriptions. Say properties repo for retail bank, and we create the repository. Just quickly copy this one and check out it from IntelliJ, and we check out the project in IntelliJ. So this is our retail bank properties repository, and in this we shall add our properties. So for that, let me create a directory called retail bank, and within this let me create few properties files. Say application -dev.properties or YML, and here I can give a message. Let's keep it application.properties instead of YML. We can give application.yml also, but here I keep it application.properties, and I just give it welcome to D2D. Now this message property we shall try to access from our retail bank application or microservice. I create another file, say application-prod.properties. So when I set profile as dev, that point of time application dev.properties will be used. When I shall give prod profile, application-prod properties will be used. And I just keep another one, simple application.properties, and this one will execute for default profile. So I just give it here, welcome to D2D. So these are three property files that we have created in our GitHub properties repository. Now we shall write a config server and provide this repository information to the config server so that config server can access these properties. So we committed this in the GitHub, and if you can see, here is our properties. There are some advantage to use YML, basically when we support locally or internationalization of our applications. But as of now, I am going with application.properties. But later I shall demonstrate how we can internationalize Swagger or provide locally support to Swagger documentation. That point of time, we shall change it from application.properties to application.yml. But now let's go with application.properties. Now let us create our config server. So create the project. I'm creating it from IntelliJ. You can create it from start.spring.io also directly. The same I have already demonstrated in some of our previous videos. And here let me select DevTools, Lombok. What else I need? I need web, and I need to use actuator. Apart from that, from the config, we select the config server. And obviously I need to select this Eureka Discovery client because I want config server to be registered in service registry, and this is needed. So service registry is the backbone of our entire set of applications. Now I have created this project. Let's quickly visit the pom.xml and maximize it a bit. So we are using actuator, web, config server, Eureka client, and DevTools. Apart from that, I need to add one bootstrap dependency because I shall use bootstrap.yml. Now, we'll quickly go here and delete these two folders because this is not needed for us. Quickly rename this one application.yml and create another one, bootstrap. So bootstrap is the file, configuration file that our Spring Boot application will read first. Now here we need to give few annotations. One is enable discovery client. This is to register this application into Eureka, and then we need to give enable config server so that this should act as a config server. Now in the bootstrap, let's give our application name, say retail bank config server. And here we define the port, say 818333. You can give any port. Now let's quickly copy the Eureka client server URL from some of our previous project and paste it here. So we have completed. This will register with the service registry. Now let's configure the part that is excessively needed for config server. Now we add the part which is needed for config server, and here we are giving cloud config server git URL, and this is the URL of our properties file. So let's copy it from here directly. Here, let's put this git URL. Then we need to give search path. And this is in which folder within GitHub repository it should search, and in our case it is the retail bank. So I am telling that within retail bank, any folder you can search. So you can give multiple folder also here, and the username and password. If it is a private repository, we need to give the username and password. But in our case, it's a public repository, so I'm not providing any username and password. And I'm giving default level main so that it should check it into the main branch. Without this also, if I don't give this default level, then also it will go to the main branch by default. But if we want to read from some other branch, then default level we need to give. So that's the configurations I need to do for config server. And here let me add few properties for actuator, and I just want to enable few actuator endpoints. Actuator is a Spring Boot provided dependencies. If I add this, it will give us some inside details about our applications. So I am giving management endpoint web expose, and here I am telling include star and exposure. So basically I am telling that you expose any of the endpoint in actuator. So that's it. That's the configurations for our config server, and that's it. So first we have added a dependency of config server, then we have added annotation enable config server, then in the bootstrap we have added the required information, say cloud config server git URL, which search path within the URL git repo search, and which branch it should find apart from username and password. And here obviously we are giving this Eureka URL to register, and we have enabled the endpoint for actuator. And for that we have added actuator dependencies. And since we are using bootstrap.yml, so bootstrap dependency we have added. So that's it. Now let's build our application. So application built successfully, and let's run it. Our application starts successfully and it is registered in service registry. So that's it. We have implemented our config server. In the next session, we shall enhance our microservice so that it can use the config server to read the properties. So thank you and see you in our next session. If you like our videos, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you and thanks for your time.